a string of his top team. We saw the loss then of Miata Fanbulla, the Communities Minister, Jess Phillips, Alex Davis-Jones, Sabir Ahmed and, of course, Wes Streeting, the former Health Secretary. Later on, last night, Mr Healey was then followed by Al Khan's, the Defence Minister, and the PPS, the Junior Minister for the Department to Pamela Nash. So yesterday, Nick, just to rewind, after 12 p.m. yesterday, Mr Healey posted a blistering resignation letter on his social media page where he accused the government of the worst attack possible, not doing enough to keep our forces and the country safe. He said the Defence Investment Plan, which we've been waiting for in government for around 9 months now, falls well short of what is needed, and he could not support it or the government. Number 10 spent much of the next hours in the bunker as they figured out what to do. When I was with you yesterday, Nick, around 2 p.m, we had the first government response. They insisted the Defence Investment Plan will deliver the capability that our armed forces need. Our colleague Aggie Chombre then got the first response of a cabinet minister. She spoke with David Lammy, who paid tribute to Mr Healey and insisted that Keir Starmer would get through this and fight on. But it wasn't until around 6 p.m. we got a letter back from Keir Starmer to Mr Healey. He did not, though, promise any more money for defence. He insisted his plan was going to be sufficient, and there were few warm words for this closest of allies. But he did confirm what Lord Robertson told us here on LBC last week, that cuts are coming to pay for this plan. The Prime Minister wrote, "This will mean significant reallocations of funding from across government departments and the right choices to protect our nation." And it took, Nick, until around 9 o'clock when we saw the government appoint a new Defence Secretary, Dan Jarvis. He has now been promoted from the point of Security Minister. I'm told we will see him out and about this morning. But, Nick, in the last few minutes, I've just been told the Prime Minister is pulling out of a defence event which had been planned for a number of days. It is not quite clear this morning who will be there from the government, whether there will be any ministers there at all. This week, of course, was meant to be pitch rolling for this Defence Investment Plan. I was with the Prime Minister just a week ago today on a defence visit where he insisted that defence is his number one priority.
Well, obviously, I've always said we're going to have to spend more on defence, and so we will set out the funding in relation to the Defence Investment Plan. It is about a question of priorities, and this is the top priority.
Now, the question this morning, Nick, and for every single government minister in the weeks to come, is do they believe Keir Starmer that this is his number one priority, and is this going to be enough, Nick?
LBC's political editor Natasha Clark reporting. We'll be hearing from Al Khan's later in this hour. News breaking at this time, 9 minutes after 7. The GDP figures are in, and the UK economy has contracted by 0.1% in April. This is the ONS Office for National Statistics figures. So that UK economy contracting by 0.1% in April, says the ONS. I remind you, Al Khan's will be with us later in this hour, but let's turn to Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat, former Security Minister, who has a very punchy piece in today's Daily Telegraph. And you drill down, Mr Tugendhat, to two key words from that resignation statement that, for you, really spell out the story. Those words are unwilling and unable. What do you take from those words? Morning, Mr Tugendhat.
Morning, Nick. Morning, Nick. Look, those are really the obituary of this government, and they're not written by me. They're written by John Healey, the man responsible up until yesterday for keeping our country safe and for making sure we have the defences we need. And he writes, it couldn't be clearer that the Prime Minister is unable and the Treasury is unwilling to spend what is needed to keep us safe. Now, that's absolutely damning, because the first duty of government, as Keir Starmer has said himself, is to keep us safe. And as he said himself again in Munich at the Munich Security Conference, we are firmly expecting Russian threats to NATO by 2030. Now, all of the promises that have been made, everything that we've heard about the Defence Investment Plan, is that those promises will be coming roughly around the time as the Russians will. Well, frankly, that's no good. Anybody who's been in the military for half a day, let alone for the 2 years that John Healey has been in the MOD doing the best job he can, knows that you need to get the kit in early to deter your enemies. You don't want to be trying to make sure it fits on the day they arrive.
You draw an interesting historical parallel in the introduction to your piece. Remind the listeners, when was the last minister resign over national security, Mr Tugendhat?
Well, that was Lord Carrington, and he resigned because he
1982
honourably...
over the Falklands, yeah.
It was, exactly. He resigned honourably because he realised that he and the Foreign Office had got it wrong, and the Argentine government had attacked British sovereign territory. Now, what John Healey is doing is very much the same thing, but he's, thank God, because he's a man of integrity, he's moving early, and he's warning us that we are seeing Russian ships operating in our waters, threatening our communications cables, and that we are not ready. And what the Prime Minister asked John to do is to preside over the death of the Royal Navy. Well, that's wrong, and John has called him out on it.
Some people will be shouting at the radio, Mr. Tugendhat, that's a bit rich. This is coming from a Conservative, and over 14 years they continue to take money away from MOD budgets, and that's why we're in the parlous state that Labour inherited. Mr. Tugendhat.
So, first of all, as you know, Nick, I have been talking about this not just for the last 14 years, but for the last 24 years. In fact, I've been talking about it ever since Gordon Brown called the then commander of Task Force Helmand when I was in his office. I was a much younger intelligence officer back then. And the Prime Minister phoned him up and asked him if he had enough helicopters to conduct the operations he was. And just before the Brigadier answered, he nipped off the phone and then told the House of Commons that he'd spoken to the commander and that we did. Well, it was complete rubbish then. We have seen 30 years of defence cuts in various different ways. But what's different? Well, I'll tell you what's different, because the Prime Minister himself has told us what's different. It's that the enemy is now at the gate. You know, we are seeing what's going on in Iran. We know what's gone on in the Persian Gulf. We saw the French had to defend Cyprus and our sovereign bases for us. And we know what's going on in Ukraine. And we see what's going on in Estonia and Poland, where they're spending 4-5% on defence, and we are at 2.3. But before you think 2.3 is half of 5, I'm afraid that's not how it works. And I'll tell you why, because we have a nuclear capability which swallows up about 0.7% of that. So actually we're spending about 1.5, 1.6, which is roughly similar to Spain, nowhere near what we need to keep our country safe.
Tom Tugendhat, thanks for your time this morning. Tom is a former Security Minister, Conservative MP for Tunbridge in God's own land of Kent. Now, as I said to you earlier, I was with Nigel Farage yesterday when the news of Mr Healey's resignation broke. It was for a very different, reflective sort of interview, and I'll tell you more about how you can hear it later in the show. But as the news broke, obviously, I wanted to get Mr Farage's reaction to what was at that time just the first resignation.
A principled resignation, and he's absolutely right to have done so. He wanted 3% to be spent on defence by 2030, something, by the way, that we campaigned for in the last manifesto. It makes sense to get to that target by then. The Prime Minister didn't match it by half, and so John Healey is gone. And what his message says is that the Prime Minister is not prioritising the defence of the realm.
Well, where does this leave Sir Keir Starmer? Where does it leave the Labour government, Mr Farage?
Keir Starmer's premiership is over. It's only a matter of time. Already in the corridors of Westminster, the jockeying for position is going on. Whether Burnham wins next week or not, there will be a challenge over the course of this summer to Starmer's leadership. It's over.
Does he get to the autumn?
I don't think he'll be leader by the Labour conference, no.
What will Donald Trump think of this? He's openly critical of NATO and the European defence systems.
Donald Trump's criticisms of NATO back from 2016 were to encourage NATO to spend more money. And many of the countries have, to be fair, partly Donald Trump, partly the Russian aggression in Ukraine. Let's face the facts. We haven't got an operational Royal Navy. We currently have 242 of our former Special Forces soldiers facing potential criminal trial. We are in the most massive trouble with our own military at a time when the world has never looked more unsafe.
Last minute or so together, the so-called Chagos Islands deal, what does that say about this government's commitment to defence, Nigel Farage?
What does it say about their belief in the country? What does it say about their belief in morality? Why is it some minorities are favoured, but a Chagossian community brutally removed by Labour government 60 years ago are not allowed to go back? And I have to say, I think the Chagos deal was the worst international deal I've ever seen in my life. And the main beneficiaries, Starmer's friends who've made millions.
Finally, you're saying this, some people would say glass houses and stones. Reform UK doesn't have a defence spokesperson. Why?
We don't have an individual defence spokesman, but at the start of this year, it was just me. Now we have a Scottish leader, a Welsh leader, 4 major cabinet roles filled, and we'll fill the rest.
And how high up the list would defence be for Reform UK?
Very high. We are a work in progress.
More on that exclusive interview to come, but my question to you now is, who do you believe? The Secretary of State, the Secretary of State for Defence, his colleague Al Carnes, from whom you'll hear in the studio in a moment, Lord Robertson, the former Defence Secretary, General Secretary of NATO, a platoon or squadron of military chiefs who are all pointing fingers. The latest MOD research that shows Russian aggression towards NATO is a record level. Do you believe them? Or do you believe a Prime Minister who says, my first duty is to keep the British people safe, and I always do what is necessary to protect our national security, but can't come up with the cash? So who do you feel that you want to support on this? It's 7:16 LBC News headlines. Dominic Ellis.
Sir Keir Starmer's under renewed pressure this morning after a series of resignations because of a row about long-term defence spending. Figures just released show the UK economy contracted by 0.1% in April. And 1 million Year 13 pupils and those under 25 starting university this autumn are to be offered the meningitis B vaccine from July. LBC weather, rain lingering in southern and northwestern parts of the UK, turning drier elsewhere, a high of 19 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. At Staples Corner, the A5 Edgware Road is closed northbound up to the North Circular Road junction. It's after a fire on Oxgate Lane, which is closed both ways. Very busy on the A21 southbound to the Sevenoaks turn-off, and that's following an accident. One lane's closed on the M4 eastbound just before junction 7 at Slough West, and that's because a car has broken down. There are queues on the M11 southbound to the North Circular Road, and there are delays of about 20 minutes on the A13 westbound, heading from Rainham to Barking. On the Underground, there are minor delays on the Victoria line. This track problem from yesterday has reoccurred at Walthamstow Central. And on the Central line, Lancaster Gate Station is closed.
This is LBC.
It's the cinematic event of the year. Critics are saying
Government with a bit of a bump. Half an hour after you concluded a round of media interviews where you were indicating that clearly you made the decision. What was the tipping point or the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back?
Nick, I clearly set out my message, which I think we need to get the funding settlement right, and we need to make sure the Defence Investment Plan is looking towards capability or equipment to fight the next war, not the last one. And the third point was around the moral component, so the legacy, the Northern Ireland legacy issue, and our issue around veterans being dragged through courts. And unless we sorted those issues out, then I couldn't stand with the government.
One newspaper has broken it down that effectively the requirement or the request was for 28 billion. You and your colleagues might have settled for high teens, 18, 19. You've been offered 13 billion. Do you recognise those figures, Mr. Carnes?
Yeah, so I recognise some of the figures. What I would say is finding the money is an issue for the Prime Minister. What we really need is an honest discussion with the population as to where that money needs to come from, and use really innovative ways and every means possible to get the right money for defence. But I also challenge back into the defence system to make sure the Defence Investment Plan is learning all those lessons from Ukraine and fighting the next war, not the last one.
You say an honest conversation. Just elaborate a bit on that, if you would, Mr. Carnes.
Well, I'd like to be, first of all, in national conversation with the population to just demonstrate the threats that we face. £15 billion worth of cyber attacks, 30% increase in Russian surface and subsurface activity in the high north, a war in the Middle East, a war in Ukraine that's cost more casualties than America took in the entire Second World War. The world is an exceptionally dangerous place, and sometimes I don't think we as government make that message clear and concise to the population.
Give us the story behind the story. When did this start to blow up? It is reported that earlier this week, Monday, Sir Keir knew that he might have an issue on his hands with you and your former colleague, the Secretary of State for Defence.
Yeah, I'm going to be really honest with you, Nick. You know, this blew up for me about 2.5 months ago when I wasn't including a Defence Investment Plan. So I wasn't actually involved in it in any way, shape or form, and asked then to be the champion to stand up and support it. And so I've wrestled with that, and then I got brought into it 2 weeks ago and realised that it wasn't representative of what I believed, which was more about drones and uncrewed systems and the lessons from Ukraine that we're seeing play out in the East. That started. And then the other issue is legacy. I cannot stand by the Northern Ireland Legacy Act in its current form.
You're a military bloke to your boots. You serve with distinction. To those who say you've deserted your post and you should have carried on the fight, how would you respond?
I would say tactics before strategy is the noise before defeat.
John Healey, how How should his resignation be characterised? What do you see in the man?
So I think John Healey's a principled man. He's put his heart and soul into defence, and he's worked exceptionally hard with a very complex and difficult department, full of amazing people, but quite bureaucratic.
It's extraordinary, the tributes from across the board, military, Conservatives, Reform, everybody saying he's a decent bloke.
And a world that's exceptionally dangerous, Nick. You know, we have, it's more fractious in any time in my 24 years in the Marines. And I think he's done a good job, and he stepped down for a principled decision.
Did he tell you he was going, Mr. Carnes?
No, but we had an inclination.
How does somebody give you an inclination?
Well, you can see when things are heading towards an impasse. And I think that's where it's got. But I'll be really honest and balanced that Number 10 needs to find the resource, but Defence needs to actually make a defence investment plan that is not preparing for the last war.
Did you have many conversations with the Chancellor over this?
Well, no, I didn't. So that was down to John Healey and the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. So I was watching from my office.
It was reported that it was quite a grumpy conversation, Mr. Carnes.
Well, this is part of the problem. You know, we're fighting each other rather than getting behind the nation, unifying the nation around a common principle of purpose. And that purpose is to defend the nation, defend the freedoms that we enjoy, and ensure we've got the determination and courage to make those difficult decisions.
How will NATO view this?
Well, this is a real problem. You know, I said this earlier. The way in which we support our armed forces directly represents our standing in the world. And I think we are a beacon for democracy across the world. We're still seen by the rest of the world as a honest broker globally. And if we reduce our military capability, that puts us down the league table, either NATO, it reduces our influence in international institutions, it reduces our leverage, and it reduces our ability to protect the nation.
But we're meant to be the senior European partner of NATO, aren't we? We hardly look like it now, Mr. Carnes.
Well, I always say you've got to put your money where your mouth is. If we want to be that senior player, we've got to have the resources behind it to do it. But we've also got to have the correct armed forces equipped with the correct capability to fight the next war, not the last one.
You talk about an honest conversation. Does that mean perhaps taking a look at the so-called welfare budget?
I think it needs a look at everything. First of all, we could have the honest conversation. 20% of the country sort of recognise that we're in a very difficult geopolitical situation with lots of different threats. I would like to increase that 20% to easy over 50% of the population, recognising that the problems abroad impact us here in the UK, whether that's inflation around food pricing, whether that's the Middle East on fuel, and recognise that if we don't have a strong armed forces, we can't actually have any leverage over those decisions. And so spending on one protects the other.
What's extraordinary is, you probably were aware of these figures earlier, but they only came out for the journalists yesterday, that the Ministry of Defence has recorded record levels of aggression from Russia towards NATO with the Shadow Fleet and other operations. All this going on the day that you and your senior colleague decided to quit. Why does the message not get through to those who need to hear it, do you imagine?
Because we own the narrative, and I think we need to be clear and concise with the population as a whole. And it needs to be a national, cross-government approach to explain to the population the threats that we face. But I'll be really clear, Nick, that we also need to look into the Defence Department, refine our procurement process, and make sure every pound of tax-paying money is spent on the right capability in the right manner to give us the right.
Well, can I throw one word at you? Ajax. Yeah. That's been an absolute
shambles. Don't get me started on Ajax.
Well, I'd like to, actually.
Well, there's a whole plethora of capabilities. If you go to Ukraine, 22 artillery rounds to one drone. That's the lethality ratios. You know, tanks last about an hour and a half once they're identified in the battlefield. So we've got to it's not either or. It's a high-low mix, but we need to move faster, quicker towards that revolution. And I was concerned that the Defence Investment Plan didn't do that with the ratios of spend.
Last minute or so together. What now for Keir Starmer? Is he hold below the water?
Well, I think Keir Starmer's got to work with Rachel Reeves, with Dan Jarvis, and Dan, just focus on Dan. Dan is a very good man, very good
ex-military bloke, yep.
Military pedigree, yep. Very balanced, very capable, and he will steady the ship and do a good job. And so I think he will do a fantastic job for Keir. And we've got to remember that whilst we're having this discussion, the political turmoil continues on the front line right now. We have sailors at sea, airmen, flying defensive combat air in the Middle East, and soldiers on the front line in NATO, and they need all the support we can give them, and Dan will do that.
And what now for Al Carnes?
Well, I'm going to go to the backbenches, and I'm going to champion the things I believe in, and we're going to help this government take this country by the scruff of its neck and sort it out. And
if, as many predict, there could be a bit of a tussle for the leadership of the Labour Party, and the ball comes out from the back of the scrum, would you be ready to take that pass, Mr. Carnes?
So I'm good at rugby and football, but we'll see what happens.
Does that mean you would be prepared to have a go at it?
I'm always up for playing.
And lastly, as a defence bloke, how difficult was it to quit? Because you men and women are trained to stand by your post.
I'm going to be really honest. I have never quit anything in my life. It's the first thing I've quit. but sometimes you've got to make a principled decision. And that's what I've done, and hopefully it will result in the right solution as we move forward.
Credit to you, sir. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Try and enjoy your weekend with your family. Get a bit of dad time.
And have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Al Carnes. Thanks for coming up. The former, of course, Armed Forces Minister. 7:28. Right, let me take you through the front pages. You can probably guess what most of them are about, but we do, and we must reflect them. Healy torpedoes Starmer is the front page of the Daily Telegraph. The Daily Mail, probably even more punchy, God help us, and there's a photograph of the Prime Minister and, of course, Ms. Reeves, Rachel Reeves, with the slogan, benefits, not bullets. Let's take a look at the front page. It's also the front page of the LBC app. MOD in revolt. Let's get one call in. Who's been holding on the longest? It's Paul in Tower Hamlets. Paul, do you support the Defence Secretary, the Armed Forces Minister, the former Secretary-General of NATO, or Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. I hope you're well. I absolutely back the ministers. Keir Starmer at this moment he's not war ready. The country isn't war ready. Billions need to be spent on defence. It's lovely being lovely with roses and flowers, but unfortunately the UK is just a shadow of its former self in terms of military capability.
Where does this leave Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves in your estimation, Paul?
Honestly, Keir Starmer's time is numbered. I don't think this will be the straw that broke the camel's back, but I do think it's just another notch on his current CV, if you will, of absolute blunders. With Rachel Reeves, I don't know if she's got the financial fortitude to drive the military capability back to where it should be.
Lastly, let me share just briefly some figures with you, because obviously this is all about money and where you can find the money. When I tell you that currently the UK defence budget is approximately £62.5 billion, and next year the welfare budget, which includes pensions, is £334 billion, of which about half are state pensions, the other is to benefits. Is there an argument about perhaps looking at the benefit budget to help our soldiers, sailors and airmen and women?
Oh, most definitely. The benefits budget is wildly out of control. 300 plus billion is an absurd number, regardless of anything. That needs to be looked at with a fine-tooth comb. And in terms of military capability and spending, I hate to say look at the US because they are trillions in debt. They spend an absolute fortune, whether rightly or wrongly, and we need to spend as much, I'm not quite sure. But we certainly need to be putting our hand in our pockets to get our servicemen and women the equipment they need.
Enjoy your weekend, Paul. Thanks for getting us started. Bullets or benefits, which way would you call it? And also coming up after the news.
Latest data shows the UK economy held up okay in the 3 months to April before contracting at the end of that period. I'm Christian May from City AM discussing this with Nick shortly.
7:31, breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari on LBC. News time, Dominic Ellis.
The former Armed Forces Minister Al Carnes has told Nick an honest national conversation is needed regarding the future funding of the UK's military. Mr Carnes left his role last night after a growing row over defence spending and follows John Healey in quitting government. Mr Healey has been replaced as Defence Secretary by the former Security Minister Dan Jarvis. The UK economy contracted slightly in April as the effects of the Iran war hit spending. Gross domestic product shrank by 0.1% according to the latest data from the Office for National Statistics. And 1 million Year 13 pupils and those under 25 starting university this autumn will be offered the meningitis B vaccine from July. Concerns about the disease have been increasing since an outbreak in Kent earlier this year, which saw 21 cases and 2 deaths. LBC weather, rain lingering in southern and northwestern parts of the UK, turning drier elsewhere, a high of 19 degrees.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Another devastating, perhaps fatal blow to Keir Starmer's authority. As the normally reliable, dependable Defence Secretary, John Healey says, "I've had enough," and quits, and accuses the Prime Minister of not doing what is necessary to keep the country safe.
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Before you renew your private health insurance, are you sure you're
resources that have resulted in the departure of the Defence Secretary and a fresh row over where the government spends its resources. The context for that, the absolute foundation for those sorts of debates, is the state of our economy as measured by growth in GDP. Now, in the first 3 months of the year, that growth rate held up okay, came in at 0.7%. The first few months of the year generally show a little bit of a bounce, but there was some momentum. However, there the good news ends. So the month of April, the economy contracted by 0.1%. The economy is therefore shrinking. And this will have consequences. This will have consequences for the state of the public finances, for borrowing down the line. And ultimately, if this trend continues, which I'm afraid a lot of economists and business groups are warning that it will over the months ahead, it will lead to a situation where, let's just pretend for a moment, there is a new prime minister and a new top team. They are going to have to face this situation of very tight resources, very difficult fiscal rules, public spending rules, and an economy which is slowing, and unemployment which is climbing, and inflation which is proving persistent. These things also, of course, a headache for the Bank of England.
City AM carrying a fascinating story about a report into AI. What's it discovered, Christian?
Well, this is a report from one of the big four auditing and consulting giants, KPMG, who released a report on the subject of AI, particularly agentic AI. That's people using AI agents across their business. The report was called Redefining Excellence in the Age of Agentic AI. Unfortunately, and I point out, I think this was an FT discovery, the report is riddled with AI errors. 45 citations in this flagship report. There are, in fact, only 5 of them which appear to be genuine or uncorrupted by what they call AI hallucinations, which to you and me, Nick, means mistakes.
I thought we were going back to the days of the Beatles then. I was quite excited by all of that.
The report spent quite a lot of time talking about the importance of getting this right, which makes it all the more embarrassing that it appears to have got it so wrong. About half of the factual claims that are supported by the 45 citations appear to be false, or at the very least misattributed. These citations are completely all over the place. KPMG have said, conceded that this is rather embarrassing. I think they've taken down the report while they look into it, lessons to be learnt, etc. But this sector, consultancy and audit sector in particular, is being buffeted by AI. It's changing their business models. It's changing what clients are prepared to pay. It's changing how they offer their services. And they're trying to stay ahead of it, not least by producing big, interesting reports on the future of AI. But if they're going to do that, they better get it right.
Lastly, has the nation got too much wind?
Well, it's certainly got too much electricity, can you believe it? Not least through the production from wind. This is a really interesting, quite technical intervention from the UK boss of the EDF energy giant, who told a conference yesterday that Britain now needs to stop focusing on building out wind farms and start thinking about how to use the electricity that's already being created. We have too much electricity, and that might sound slightly odd thing to try and get your head around on a Friday morning, but Simone Rossi, the energy giant's chief exec in the UK, said that the expansion of wind and solar power has created more electricity generation than is needed, and we're now spending fortunes on trying to build the grid infrastructure to distribute this surplus electricity. In fact, we often pay, in a rather bizarre turn of events, for producers who are producing too much electricity, and we pay them to stop doing so. So this all sounds rather counterintuitive, but the bottom line is, and there's an irony here, the energy boss says that the UK doesn't need this amount of electricity because demand has fallen so much, and by which they mean deindustrialization, a shift away from manufacturing. Some people will say that actually it's this shift to green energy has been partly responsible for that. But nevertheless, the conversation now from the top energy chief is stop building new wind farms, focus on how to increase demand for the electricity which is already being created.
Grateful for your time. Have a good weekend. Christian May, editor-in-chief at City AM, 7:39. Coming to you, Mark. I think you're ex-military yourself. Let's just get some of your messages coming in via text and emails. David in Bexley. I'm sure deep down Starmer is a decent man. However, I no longer believe a single word that comes out of his mouth. And even by the low bar of recent years, the worst Prime Minister this country has seen. Same subject. Steve says Starmer doesn't care about British people and he's spineless. He says the same old BS again and again. We are weak and other countries can see it. Joe in Suffolk. That interview with Al Khan's, he's of course was the Armed Forces Minister until last night, was the most impressive and refreshing conversation with an MP I've heard in years. Honest, open, concise, clearly a principled and capable individual. We need more of him in government. Well, if the fight is on to be leader of the Labour Party, don't be surprised if Mr Khan, what was it, he loves playing any sport or something like that. When I said if the ball comes out the back of the scrum, I think we know what he was saying there. Let's get to your calls. Mark in St Albans. Mark, what you can tell me, you're ex-military, I understand, sir, is that right?
That's right, yeah. Nick, I spent over 25 years in the Army.
Well, thank you for that, sir.
No problem. It was a pleasure to serve. But I spent a posting in the DE&S down in Abbey Wood, which is the procurement agency.
Okay, yep. Down by Erith, I know Abbey Wood, down by Erith and Thamesmead, yeah.
That's right, that's right. And the amount of waste I saw going on there, I mean, just as a small, very tiny example, but symptomatic of the larger problems we have. I went in there, I was there for 2.5, 3 years, and for one of those years, I walked past a workstation where there was a chap. Every time I walked past him, he was playing solitaire on his computer, the card game. Absolutely no work, day in, day out, for well over a year. And halfway through this period, I went over and said, why are you only playing solitaire on your computer? And he said, well, they can't find me a post to go being employed in within DNS. So he said, but I've got to come in every day. I've got to clock in and clock out in order to get my pay. If I don't do that, I won't get paid. So I'm just sitting here for a whole year. I mean, just a tiny example, Nick, but, you know, the whole procurement system needs a change. It's taking 10 years or more to get a bit of kit into service. It's just not fit for purpose in this day and age we live in now.
Well, let me ask you then.
Something needs to change.
As someone who's been in it, who's been brave enough to serve for more than 20 years, is your argument then a little bit more on Sir Keir Starmer's side? In the fact as, well, we're not really going to give you that much more money until you put your house in order. Do you have some degree of sympathy for him and the Chancellor?
There is that. But fundamentally, equipment and decent equipment fit for today's military requires money and resources, and we simply haven't got it. I served, I started off in the mid-80s, and the size of the armed forces to what it is now, I mean, it's just incredible. The fact that we would struggle to put out and maintain a brigade's worth of soldiers on a continual basis is ridiculous.
Grateful for your time on the radio. Thanks for your service in the military. Mark, many thanks for that. Let's move to other matters now. I've referenced Nigel Farage and this different style of interview I've done with him. As a politician who's had many comebacks over the years, most recently returning to frontline politics, of course, finally attaining his goal of becoming an MP. He's up in Clacton. With the polls showing Reform running at around 26% still, they are in a good place. So I asked Nigel Farage, will he end up in Downing Street?
I keep trying to run away. It's like The Godfather, isn't it? They keep dragging me back in.
Do you want to be Prime Minister?
Do you know something, Nick? Not for the sake of the office or the title, because I couldn't give a damn about that. Never been interested in that. For me, politics is not about... It's not about what I become in terms of a personal status. It's about what I can do. Right now, I believe I'm the only person that's got sufficient public report and the courage to take on the establishment and do what needs to be done. Right now, I'm the right person. May well be in a couple of years' time or more, somebody else comes along who's better equipped. Right now, I do believe it's me.
So you could be the Prime Minister?
Yes.
What would be the first few policies, Mr Farage?
We've got to restore trust in the fact that voting actually counts for anything. Otherwise, things like riots and public disorder will become more commonplace. Voting is our safety valve. That's our way of expressing our opinion without fighting. So I do actually believe getting rid of the Human Rights Act, getting back proper control of our borders, re-establishing trust that the voters get what they actually opt for in an election is the first thing to do.
Now, more of that interview to come, but I want to stress, and I'll tell you how you can hear that interview. It's going to be on LBC tonight, but it's a very different style interview. He chooses, for instance, of his favourite records, his favourite book. Who's the politician he'd want to get trapped in a lift with? What was it like when, in his mid-20s, having nearly had a leg amputated and spent 11 months in plaster, the next year he got cancer, which obviously he survived. So if you think I'm shouting at him about going to Clacton or voting records or £5 million, don't listen, OK? Don't waste an hour of your life. If you want to hear about the background of the man, do tune in, and this is where you can find it. It's called Farage on the Record. It's on LBC tonight at 9. You can watch it on Global Player, the LBC app, and YouTube at 9 p.m. Don't watch it if you expect me to shout at him about voting in Clacton. Please don't watch it. Do something else. Watch the World Cup if there's a game on. But we'll play you just extracts, because we can't give you the full first hour. By the way, what's his favourite record? Oh, don't want to find about that. I just want to shout at him about £5 million. Don't listen then. Just don't listen. But what did he make of election night with President Trump?
He was having a light lunch with Elon Musk. And so I sat down between the two of them, and I just thought, what on earth am I doing here?
What advice has he given you about possibly being PM?
Have fun doing it.
So you can hear that all at 9. Here's former Armed Forces Minister Al Carnes telling me earlier in the hour the PM must shift his focus on defence spending.
Finding the money is an issue for the Prime Minister. What we really need is an honest discussion with the population as to where that money needs to come from, and use really innovative ways and every means possible to get the right money for defence.
The government response from the Secretary of State on the media round follows this. 7:45, LBC News headlines, Dominic Ellis.
Sir Keir Starmer's under renewed pressure this morning after a series of resignations because of a row about long-term defence spending. Figures just released show the UK economy contracted by 0.1% in April. And 1 million Year 13 pupils and those under 25 starting university this autumn are to be offered the meningitis B vaccine from July. LBC weather, rain lingering in southern and northwestern parts of the UK, turning drier elsewhere, a high of 19 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Today's on the M25 clockwise to junction 25 at the A10. It was after an accident that happened earlier. And then also on the M25 on the Essex stretch, there were clockwise queues onto the QE2 bridge. And that's also after an accident. At Staples Corner, the A5 Edgware Road remains closed northbound at the North Circular Road junction. It's because of that fire. Long delays on the A41 in West Hampstead going southbound to the Finchley Road. It's because of an accident and one lane is closed for recovery. Very busy on the A21 on the Tunbridge bypass southbound to the Sevenoaks turn-off. There's been an accident here as well. And on the Underground, there are severe delays on the Victoria line and minor delays on the Piccadilly.
This is LBC.
Want a simple way to earn a fixed monthly income? At ULEZ Prosperity.
Perfect with vodka. But even on your own, you make the most exquisite soft drink. The most exquisite soft drink. Fever Tree. Straight up or mixed. It's a matter of taste.
My darling, the carriage awaits. The Duchess herself will be there. But what if he's already in the ballroom, waiting?
Sorry, are we getting off here?
Huh? Oh, no. Next stop.
Lose yourself in a thrilling romantasy story. Think again. Take the train with Southeastern. Choose from our range of tickets. Buy direct from us and pay no booking fees.
Southeastern.
In a world full of noise and uncertainty, IG is the investment platform that backs you. Forget the dubious tips from that guy down the pub. Get real-time insights, analysis and tools. No more fat cat brokers clawing your gains. Pay zero commission on your investments. Switch to a platform trusted by British investors for over 50 years. IG. Trade, invest, progress. Your capital's at risk. Other fees may apply.
Get unlimited video calls with vets from First Vet with Pets in a Pickle. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, visit petsinapickle.co.uk.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973.
Coming up on 10 minutes before 8, we'll come to more of your reactions concerning defence, but let's get a government response to the extraordinary events of yesterday. Senior politician, indeed, Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Labour MP Peter Kyle joins me now. Thanks for coming on, Secretary of State. So it would appear an issue as important as Britain's security is the latest victim of the Prime Minister's inability to lead. What does that say about his role as Prime Minister?
Hi, Nick. It's good to be back with you again. Well, just to say that the purpose behind it is undimmed. And we have consistently delivered on defence. We got to the 2.6% or 2.5% target years ahead of target, our promises, our manifesto commitment. And we've got to 2.6% now, and we are charging ahead. This is a really difficult moment because we are in such a complex...
You're charging ahead, Mr. Kyle.
No, we are charging ahead with the purpose.
From 2.6 to 2.68, so that's 0.08%.
Well,
that's charging ahead.
Nick, we will get to 3% by the early period of the next Parliament and by 3 to 3.5% by 2035.
But it's not enough, Mr. Kyle. Well, it's not enough for your former colleague, the Secretary of State for Defence. It's not enough for the Armed Forces Minister. It's not enough for Lord Robertson, who was a Defence Secretary under Labour and Secretary General of NATO. And it's not enough for a squadron of former military men and women. How can we, with straight face, tell us that you're getting to where you need to be?
I can tell you, Nick, with a completely straight face, that when we went into the last election pledging to get to 2.5% by the end of this Parliament, everybody agreed that that was an ambitious target. We have delivered that less than 2 years into the government, and we got to 2.6%.
Then why have you lost your Defence Secretary?
Hang on, Nick, hang on a sec. And we are escalating. Now, the second bit, just to put in here, because I know you like these sorts of things are important for you.
And my listeners.
The growth figures have come out today and showed that the growth is up again. We got to 0.7%. Now, of course, all of the figures I've just given you and we've just discussed, they are percentage figures of the GDP. Now, because we've also done these reforms and we've done the investment into these sectors in a way that delivers growth for the economy, it is going to be more money overall. So £270 billion will be invested into defence over the course of this Parliament, and that is substantial.
But Secretary of State, the economy contracted by 0.1% in April.
Yes, but in the quarter it rose. Overall, this quarter it rose.
And it contracted in April.
Yes, but in the quarter, Nick, it rose. And in the previous quarter it rose. We are still the top of the G7 growth rate. But also, if you annualise...
Going so swimmingly, Mr. Kyle, why would John Healey, who I read as a man of great principle, why would Al Carnes, who's just been in this studio just about 20 minutes ago, why would they both choose to leave their posts?
Well, they're not the first to go over defence. Last year, we had a Secretary of State that left office because Keir Starmer made the decision to increase defence spending at a very rapid rate and did so by making tough decisions, and somebody left government there. All the way through this to deliver on the purpose, which is not just investing money into our armed forces, but modernising it and doing it away...
Have you read Nick, Mr Healey's resignation?
No, I have. Nick, let me finish a sentence. But also doing it in a way that takes time, because we have to get it right for the moment we're in, where technology is disrupting the way we keep ourselves safe and also have offensive capabilities as a government. And we need to make sure we get these things right. So the purpose is undimmed. And I do pay tribute to John Healey, and I did read his resignation letter and did so with sorrow, because I've enjoyed working with him.
And in that letter, which is fired off like an exocet, he tells the Prime Minister that he's unable to defend Britain and the Treasury is unwilling to provide the cash, and yet you're still telling me you're doing a great job.
Well, just look at the facts, though, Nick. The
yes,
cash has
I will look at the
increased.
facts. The facts as put forward by your former colleague John Healey, Al Carnes, Lord Robertson and all the others.
The funding has...
How can they all be wrong? And Sir Keir Starmer, with a questionable record so far in government, is right.
When Keir Starmer has increased the defence spending at a rate that nobody thought was deliverable. He has got to 2.5%, then to 2.6%, years ahead of the target. And we've done so on the back of a growing economy. The Tories cut the percentage to 2.3%, on the back of a shrinking and a stagnating economy. So overall, it meant even less money going into our armed forces. We are getting back to where we need to be. And I understand your frustration.
The reality, Mr. Kyle, is, as we have seen from two senior Labour figures, Pat McFadden saying that all the meetings he goes to are in order to pay benefits to others. That's Mr. McFadden, one of your senior colleagues. One of your former senior colleagues, John Healey. The defence plan falls well short of what is required for defence and the country at this dangerous time. That is the reality. You tax, you prefer benefits to bullets. That's the truth, Mr. Healey, isn't it?
No, I'm Mr. Kyle.
Mr.
Yes,
Kyle, that's the truth, isn't it? You prefer benefits to bullets, and you're putting at risk the nation's security, Mr. Kyle.
Nick, this is a country that is finally moving forward on the back of sustained economic...
Not in defence terms.
On the back of sustained economic growth, we are moving forward with our public services, waiting lists coming down, schools being rebuilt, investment
Can we talk about defence?
No, because you've just mentioned a whole series of different government areas and also our reputation around the world. And I'll get back to defence, because we have also increased spending in defence. We've signed 1,400 new contracts, defence contracts, since we came in. We've given a pay rise to our military, and we are also making sure that our defence budget, which is £270 billion over the course of this Parliament, an unprecedented amount of money will be benefiting British jobs and also British businesses, where we need to get more economy growth into the economy. And all of this on the back of a growing economy. So these are fundamental benefits, not just in our defence sector, but right across our society. And these are things that show a sense of clarity of purpose driven by the Prime Minister. So I don't accept the challenge you put in that.
Let me give you a different tale of spending under your administration, if I may, Mr. Carl. Disability benefits of £71 billion a year, a record 3.5 million on universal credit for incapacity, 71% of new claims mental health related, Motability cars on PIP worth £7 billion, scrapping the child benefit cap at a cost of £3 billion. That is the truth of the financial picture, isn't it?
And we are reforming mobility, and we're also brought the youth guarantee in so that we can start tackling youth unemployment. We've got the Milburn report there. We're undertaking modernisation and reforms in welfare that have been untouched before. Don't forget, 250,000 kids, young people, went on to benefits in the last 3 years of the Tories. So again, we have a big challenge to tackle, and we are getting on with that challenge. And believe me, Nick, believe me, I came into politics because I wanted to give young people every opportunity in life to make sure their hard work is rewarded. And we do not live in that world because we didn't inherit that world, but we are trying to do everything we can to deliver it. I understand the challenges out there when it comes to welfare, but we are tackling it, and it is not fair to say that we aren't.
Let's talk about some figures. It's reported that the Ministry of Defence wanted £28 billion. They might have settled for 18. They've been offered £13 billion. Meanwhile, Ed Miliband's department and his carbon capture schemes cost £9 billion. How is Mr Miliband able to keep the door bolted to the Prime Minister? Why don't we get some cash from him?
Let's see what happens when the Defence Investment Programme is released in a very short period of time, because we're going to release it before the NATO summit.
Yes, it was ready last autumn. Why has it taken so long?
Well, because we've been working on it to get it right, as I said.
Because of the rows that have been going on about it, isn't it, Mr Kyle?
Well, firstly, I'm not going to apologise for getting the funding on this level of public money right. And we need to get it right in a fast-changing world. The way we are defending our country and need to defend our country in 2026 going forward is fundamentally different from when it was just a couple of years ago before the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We have learned a lot about technological defence and the role of technology in our defence. So even in the last 6 months, we have had to do a lot of adaptations, and I'm not going to apologise for that. And in the next couple of weeks, before that NATO summit, you will see the plan and the costings, and you will see how this whole government is getting behind this plan. I was asked to take a cut to my budget. I did so before the Prime Minister had even finished the sentence, because this has to be a priority for our country, and I am proud to play a part of it.
What has the Prime Minister said to you about the recent resignation, Secretary of State?
These are all things, these conversations will always stay private, but what we're doing and what I'm doing is showing that I'm having loyalty towards the purpose of this government. This purpose of the government is going to growth into the economy. As I just said, the purpose of this government is to deliver growth for the country, defence of the country, and investment in our public services, our reputation around the world, and making sure that people up and down our country feel the benefits of it. And I do say all of that with a sense of humility that we just come through difficult elections, and we need to make sure we double down so that people feel the benefit of it.
How secure is the Prime Minister in his post at this time?
Well, right now I speak with my actions and not just words. I am here because I care deeply about the purpose of this government. I have always been loyal to the purpose of a Labour government and how it delivers. And right now the Prime Minister is leading with purpose, and for that I am extremely grateful.
Lastly, it is reported this morning that the Chief of the Defence Staff, Sir Richard Knighton, could resign over the lack of defence spending. How embarrassing would that be? Or can you tell me it's not going to happen?
Well, Nick, you just put that to me live on air. You know that I'm not a commentator, that I'm here delivering on the purpose of this government, and I'm here to make sure to reassure your listeners.
Do you think that would finally perhaps make the penny drop over spending for Sir Keir if he lost the Chief of the Defence Staff?
Well, what your listeners need to be reassured on is that we are determined to deliver a plan, and that plan will come soon, and that plan will deliver for the security, defence and our ability to have offensive capabilities as a country in the age that we are living in.
I'm grateful for your time this morning. Thank you. Peter Carl, Labour MP for Hove and Portslade and Secretary of State for Business and Trade, putting forward the government's stance on this, a conversation to which we will, of course, return. It's 8 o'clock. News headlines on LBC.
on your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock. Sir Keir Starmer is under renewed pressure this morning after a flurry of resignations because of a row about long-term defence spending. John Healey's departure as Defence Secretary yesterday was followed by that of the Armed Forces Minister Al Khan's late last night. It's understood an extra £13 billion is being promised for defence, less than the original £28 billion requested by officials. Speaking to Nick this morning, Al Khan said he hopes his resignation will result in the right solution as the government moves forward.
Finding the money is an issue for the Prime Minister. What we really need is an honest discussion with the population as to where that money needs to come from, and use really innovative ways and every means possible to get the right money for defence. But I also challenge back into the defence system to make sure the Defence Investment Plan is learning all those lessons from Ukraine and fighting the next war, not the last one.
Sir Keir Starmer has already moved to replace John Healey as Defence Secretary, with Dan Jarvis taking over the post. The Business Secretary, Peter Kyle, has just spoken to Nick. He's defended the government's plan for defence spending.
Well, just look at the facts, though, Nick. The
Yes,
cash has
I will
increased.
look at the facts. The facts as put forward by your former colleague John Healey, Al Carnes, Lord Robertson and all the others.
The funding has...
How can they all be wrong? And Sir Keir Starmer, with a questionable record so far in government, is right.
When Keir Starmer has increased the defence spending at a rate that nobody thought was deliverable. He has got to 2.5%, then to 2.6%, years ahead of the target.
Stay with LBC for the latest. Iran says it hasn't reached a final decision on a deal with the US to end the war. Last night, President Trump claimed again that an agreement was imminent. Official figures show the UK economy contracted by 0.1% during April after a surprisingly strong start to the year. The latest data covers the period when household budgets came under pressure from higher fuel costs due to the war in Iran. 1 million Year 13 pupils and those under 25 starting university this autumn are to be offered the meningitis B vaccine from next month. Concerns about the disease have increased in recent months since an outbreak in Kent earlier this year, which saw 21 cases and 2 deaths. The Mayor of London says it's shameful that frontline workers in London are reporting fear and burnout as a direct result of racist abuse. Writing exclusively for LBC, Sir Sadiq Khan says abuse of NHS nurses has jumped by 86% in recent years. He's urging the public to show more support for emergency workers as part of a new initiative. You can read more of Sir Sadiq's remarks on the LBC app. In the city, the FTSE 100 has just reopened at 10,303. It closed up 49 yesterday. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, rain lingering in southern and northwestern parts of the UK through the morning, turning drier elsewhere, a high of 19 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Dominic Ellis.
Decades, and we hear about the background of one of their key players. Meanwhile, when it comes to England, where's the council that's telling England fans they can't put up flags because it intimidates migrants? We'll give you the full story on that later in the hour. And an interview with a difference with the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. It is one where he chooses his favourite music, his favourite book. But we did talk about other matters. What do you think of Donald Trump?
Just an extraordinary human being. I mean, he is... talk about resilience. They've tried to assassinate him time after time. He's a remarkable human being.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
We will come back and we will take your calls. So I know many of you are hanging on. Some of you want to say that you've had enough of Sir Keir Starmer. Some of you want to address the question I put at the start of the show, which is where should the money be going, bullets or benefits? And we'll come to that. But since Sir Keir Starmer promised to end the chaos on the steps of Downing Street less than 2 years ago, there's been no shortage of resignations. As I say, less than 24 months into government, he's lost a Deputy Prime Minister, Transport Secretary, Health Secretary, and now a Defence Secretary, as well as losing dozens of junior ministers and aides. LBC's Henry Riley looks at some of the key personnel changes that have rocked this government.
This is a united team and we are delivering together. Look what we delivered.
Mocked as he boasted a united government, it was on the steps of Downing Street that he promised that the chaos would end.
You have given us a clear mandate and we will use it to deliver change, end the era of noisy performance, tread more lightly on your lives.
However, just 4 months later,
Louise Haigh has resigned as Transport Secretary after it emerged she pleaded guilty to a fraud offence a decade ago.
we had the Corruption Minister Tulip Siddiq resign over corruption allegations in Bangladesh.
Where Bangladesh court has sentenced ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and her niece, British MP Tulip Siddiq.
Health Minister Andrew Gwynn resigned after he joked in a WhatsApp group that he hoped a pensioner constituent would die before the next election. Annalise Dodds resigned as Development Minister over aid cuts, a resignation over planned disability cuts, and a Homelessness Minister leaving after claims that she evicted her tenants. In late 2025, however...
I feel, that it is devastating for me, and the fact that I spoke to my family about it. I spoke to my ex-husband, who has been an incredibly supportive person.
The Deputy Prime Minister resigned after failing to pay enough tax. A digital minister resigned after claims a think tank he used to run commissioned a report to look into the background of journalists. And then came the local elections, where the then Defence Secretary was put up to defend the government.
Keir will take a lion's share of this responsibility. I know he'll be determined to turn this round.
What on earth, sir, makes you think he can?
I see the way that he is restoring the influence and position of Britain in the world.
But despite John Healey's words, he couldn't stem the tide of resignations. 4 ministers, including Jess Phillips, and then the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting.
Do we then rule out you ever serving in a Keir Starmer-led government again?
I can't see that happening for a fundamental reason, Nick. I told the Prime Minister privately that I'd lost confidence in him.
Then yesterday...
UK Defence Secretary John Healey has resigned due to the British government's lack of spending in the sector. His resignation taking place several hours before he was due to meet our Defence Minister Richard Marles.
The usually loyal, well-respected Defence Secretary quit.
How much does each AUKUS sub cost?
At the moment, we're designing and looking at how the components put together. You say yourself it's 2030s into the 2040s before the first of those subs.
I know, but you must have an idea. So we don't know how many, and we don't know the individual cost. Can I buy a car from you?
John Healey, who may relish the chance to relinquish the morning round.
How many frigates do we have in the fleet?
We have 17 frigates and destroyers. It's down from 23.
We only have HMS Dragon in operation down there now. Where are all the others? Are all the others being repaired in some way, shape or form?
I'm proud of what we're able to do.
LBC's Henry Riley. John Healey concluding Henry Riley's report. We look at the personnel changes, the tale of the tape, the roster of resignations or whatever it might be. All right, let's bring to the conversation my LBC colleague Andrew Marr, presenter of Tonight with Andrew Marr. Has a piece online for LBC with the headline, "These are the end times for Keir Starmer." Andrew Marr joins me now. Andrew, will it be a death of 1,000 cuts or a brutal one-off defenestration in your view? Good morning.
Good morning. I don't think it's going to be a one-off moment. I think he is fighting so incredibly hard. And, he's trying to resist gravity. And we love people trying to resist gravity. We applaud them, whether they are base jumpers or tightrope walkers or evil. We say, good on you. And then eventually, Nick, gravity wins. We don't quite know when gravity is going to win this time. Every resignation, every collapse is different. Liz Truss was different from Boris Johnson, was different, of course, from Rishi Sunak. That was a general election. But elections aside, these things tend to come in stages. I just think this is absolutely it. And my phone is full of messages from Labour MPs saying the same thing, including ministers, by the way. And, you were listening to Peter Kyle a moment ago. It's a morning for brave faces, everyone. Brave faces on Ferrari. Do your best. I can tell you, however, I've been told that Peter Kyle went to see the Prime Minister to get an assurance that in the event of a leadership contest involving Keir Starmer, he would be able to support somebody else without losing his job. So that is what's going on behind the scenes.
Goodness. Right, your defying gravity was a wicked illustration of where the Prime Minister, you've got it, where the Prime Minister finds himself, Andrew. What do we look for over the coming weekend or possibly the coming days?
Well, I think back to that extraordinary day when Boris Johnson lost a string of ministers, culminating, of course, in his Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, and then more after that. I was sitting in an LBC studio and watching the bodies cascade past the window, one after another. And I kind of think that's possibly the next thing. We may see some further resignations. It'll be very interesting to see. I just feel Keir Starmer has been telling us again and again, defence is the most important duty of the Prime Minister. He has, by the way, they keep saying, it's the biggest increase in defence since the Cold War. That is not a great record. Defence collapsed after the Cold War. There has been a very tiny increase since then, nothing like enough. But to do all of that, and then have your Defence Secretary saying you haven't got the strength to persuade your Chancellor to provide the money that you know perfectly well is necessary, is, in my view, absolutely deadly. I think that sentence that John Healey wrote in his letter yesterday is in itself a resignation matter.
Andrew, it's interesting you mentioned the Chancellor because all the Sturm and angst is arriving at the front door of number 10. Is it fair to say that actually the Chancellor should be copping quite a lot of this because we read of a furious stand-up blazing row between her and the former Defence Secretary, John Healey?
Yes, in the end, it's the Chancellor who's in charge of the money. I mean, technically, it's the Prime Minister, of course. He is First Lord of the Treasury. But it was Rachel Reeves's job. And there have been very, very difficult conversations right across government, including the Department of Health, including Ed Miliband's department you mentioned a few moments ago, and others, to get little chunks of money for this. Again, we say 13 billion. The armed forces say if you take out inflation, the real increase is just 10 billion, as compared to the 28 billion, which was the minimum they thought they needed. So the gap is absolutely enormous. But it was the Chancellor's job to try to find a way through that. I think in the end, she resisted going for taxation, which is the obvious way to do it. She doesn't want to change her fiscal rules. She was sort of surrounded by problems. But, for instance, she could have gone for issuing a new defence bond. There's an awful lot of saving sloshing around this economy, Nick, and a defence bond with a guaranteed rate of interest and return and a patriotic message behind it might well have done well. But it's the kind of lateral or radical thinking that the Treasury under Rachel Reeves is not prepared to contemplate.
It was a privilege to share a studio with you yesterday afternoon as this broke with our colleague Sheila Fogarty, and I asked you a question then which I'd like to ask you again because you know the inner workings so well. How come Ed Miliband seems so secure with the extraordinary amount of money and some of the questionable policies he seeks to endorse?
Well, I think two reasons. First of all, if you really had an honest conversation with Keir Starmer and said, what is your government about? What is it changing in the real world? He would say, we face a climate crisis. Net zero is something that nobody else will do. I will do. That is our industrial policy. That is absolutely central. But the other thing, of course, is that Ed Miliband is very, very close to Keir Starmer. They're neighbours. They helped each other in their political careers. And there is a kind of bond of closeness. Now, I'm told that Ed Miliband's people are actually helping Andy Burnham at the moment in Makerfield, so don't overdo that. But, there is a bond there. And even in private, Ed Miliband has been much more supportive of Keir Starmer than you would expect. He is the effective leader of the so-called soft left in the Labour Party. They need each other. Up to now, they've hung together. If he went, that would be that. But so far, he's hanging on.
Lastly, to quote the line of the late, great Brian Hanrahan, when it comes to Prime Ministers, you've counted them all out and you've counted them all in, or whatever it's been. Any idea of a timeline on this one, Andrew Marr?
I would be very surprised if Keir Starmer is Prime Minister by the time of the Labour conference. That's in October.
Andrew Marr, thanks so much for your time. Good to work with you yesterday. Even better to have you on the show today. Andrew presents Tonight with Andrew Marr, and there's a piece online on LBC. Now, as my colleague has referenced, Makerfield, that's made my morning, because now we can hear this from another of my LBC team, George Ellison.
Jake Austin for the Liberal Democrats, Count Binface for the Count Binface Party, Andy Burnham representing Labour and the Cooperative Party, Dan Clark for the Libertarian Party, John Dyer, Independent, Ed Gemmell, Climate Party, Paul Gould, Independent, Howling Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party, Rob Kenyon for Reform UK, Rob Ponell, Independent, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield, the Green Party, Peter Ward for Rejoin EU, and Michael Winstanley for the Conservative and Unionist Party.
That's the full list of candidates in that by-election. Tony, you've been hanging on the line. I want to hear from you and other callers, and we're also beginning at telling you the city that will not allow residents to hang out the England flag during the World Cup as it intimidates migrants. It's 8:16. LBC News headlines. Dominic Ellis.
Speaking to Nick, the Business Secretary Peter Kyle has insisted the whole government is getting behind the Defence Investment Plan despite two major resignations. The Armed Forces Minister Al Carnes followed the Defence Secretary John Healey in quitting the government yesterday over a dispute about future military funding. And official figures out this morning show the UK economy contracted by 0.1% during April after a surprisingly strong start to the year. LBC weather, rain lingering in southern and northwestern parts of the UK, turning drier elsewhere, a high of 19 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne Webb. In Hertfordshire, the A1M is blocked southbound between junction 7 at Stevenage South and 6 at Welling. It's following an accident and there are lengthy queues on the approach. Traffic was being held on the M1 northbound at junction 11A at Dunstable because of an investigation that has just reopened. The A21, the Tunbridge bypass, remains closed southbound between the Sevenoaks turnoff and the A26. It's because of an accident and there are delays of around 2 miles on the approach. Long delays on the A4 eastbound in Chiswick up to the Hogarth roundabout. A bus has broken down, so one lane is closed for recovery. Also, the problems continue on the underground. There are severe delays on the Victoria line.
This is LBC.
Here's a tale of two